Shalom, party people. Welcome to the 12th Seat. Parker Gurin, otherwise known as Guitars and ARs, asks a multifaceted question over on Instagram. How do you find a balance in your schedule to work out, read the Word, be with your family, homestead projects, and work a full-time job? He also asks, when you first came to Torah, did you still go to church while observing the Sabbath? When did you make the full transition over, and how did you do so? It feels like it has to be all or nothing. All right, so first part of that question. How do you find balance in your schedule? All right, so Parker, we have met face to face. I know you know that, but for the audience watching. So Parker, I'm going to try and talk to you directly as much as I can while still including however many of our closest friends that are watching this. Easy answer to a hard question of how do you find time. Honestly, number one, you have to make time, but number two, you have to prioritize what is truly most important to you. And that first answer should be your family. I mean, you go and you look and see how we're actually spending our time on what's truly most important to you. And very, very few people who actually do say family are actually prioritizing time with their family. So that makes things a little rough. And, caveat, most important thing should be your relationship with the Most High. People say that, but how many people actually, when you look at their time, their budget, everything that they do, whatever they say is most important, is that truly where they're spending the most time? Is that truly where they're spending the most of their money? Is that truly where they're spending the most of, their thought process throughout the day? No, it's not. Oftentimes what we claim are our most important things, we're lucky if it gets 5% of our time, money, and attention. So it is what it is, but you have got to actually sit down and write out what your priorities are in life and where you want to go over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Do you want rock solid relationship with your spouse and your kids? How are you going to get there? How are you going to maintain that? How are you going to develop and cultivate those long-term relationships past where they are right now? Plan that out. If you just want to be a present dad who shows up a couple of times, for the important things, okay, cool. But I don't think you want to be that kind of dad. I know you don't want to be that kind of husband. So sit down and write out what the most important things to you are and how you're going to maintain, sustain, and improve. Write all those things out. And in all honesty, come back to it a few days later and write those things out again. And then come back to it, a few weeks later and write those things out. You're going to be fleshing out more and more and more the more often you return to this. But actually finding time in your schedule for the things that we deem important, which let's face it, exercising is an investment in our future. So yeah, I'm going to do the best I can to work out. Now, even if it's a bad workout, it's better than no workout. So let's get that out there. Read the Word. Like we should be in our copy of the scriptures. We should be in our Bible. We should be reading, and not just reading for the sake of reading, but actually reading to draw closer to Yeshua. So like those things should be happening. Time with family should be happening. If you are of the mindset that, you want to be homesteading, cool. Build towards that. What does that look like? Full-time job. If you're like most of us, you are going to be doing everything you can to provide for your family financially. And from what I know of you, I know you work several jobs. That's difficult. It really is. So, low-hanging fruit. Everything that's not on that list of these are my priorities, like, I will do this every day. I will have meaningful interactions with my children every day. I will have meaningful time set aside with my spouse every day, that we are going to sit, we're going to hold each other's hands, we're going to look into each other's eyes, and we're going to, make googly eyes at each other. Whatever it is. If you are not intentional with, hey, here's my priority, everything that's outside of that priority, you need to figure out how it can become less of a problem or outsource it. So, case in point, I took a lot of pride in cutting my own grass. When I was in high school, I ran a small business that was mine, where I was mowing lawns. I had several lawns that I cut, and I made like $50-$60 an hour. And I had one day a week blocked out where I just went and I cut everybody's lawn, weed eat, mow, blow, edge, and started with a push mower and ended up doing a lot with it. And for a high school kid, that was really good money. So, no brainer. Like, I had built that discipline, built those habits in good techniques of cutting grass because I had done it for years. To the point where that led to other jobs because of the connections that I had made. So it was good. Fast forward to now, wife, kids, house. We'll get into the homestead stuff, but wife, kids, house, all this kind of stuff going on, especially small babies, and trying to give my wife some kind of a break. I'd go back and forth over a few different things on how to do some of this, but ultimately it just kind of boiled down to my time is much more valuable doing other things than push mowing the grass, because we got a little plot of land, and push mowing a certain size of it that is the stuff we touch every day just takes me a while. You add in, hey, we've got some of these projects that we need to do, got a weed eat, mow, blow, edge on top of that. Like, it's just time consuming. And could we buy better equipment to where it gets done faster? Yeah, sure, we can. But is that the most effective use of our funding? When we found somebody who will cut it at a reasonable cost, doesn't take him hardly any time to do it, and for the number of times that he's going to be cutting it before we move out of this house, it's not worth buying the equipment to do it. Plus moving the equipment and all this other stuff. So find a local guy to cut my grass, no brainer. I made sure he wasn't some big company. I wanted him to be local. I wanted it to be something where he was supporting his family, like through a supplemental means doing it, and we found the right person. So, boom, outsourcing something that took 2-3 hours of my time once a week to now somebody else is doing it for me. Is that a cost increase? Yeah, it is. But what's my time worth to me? Because now that's a couple extra hours a week that I get with my family. So, easy peasy, no brainer on that one. Pay somebody the, $80 to do it, and he's done. So, makes my life easier. There's a lot of things where you can identify something that you're holding on to. Hey, I have to be the one to do this. No, you don't. If you can outsource it and it's not a top tier item that like this has to be done by you, do that outsourcing. Find somebody who's even semi-capable They don't even necessarily have to be the best. But find someone who's semi-capable and pay them to do it. This is going to be where, hey, maybe you are paying the handyman to come do it instead of you, and that hurts your pride because you have to be Mr. Joe Fix-It around the house. What's your time worth? Because you can make more money, but you aren't going to be making any more time. You can't add a second to your life. So, for what it's worth, outsource. Getting into some of the nitty-gritty. Workout, finding time for it, honestly, one of two things. Either do it while your family's asleep, or find a way to incorporate your kids into working out. I kind of do both. It really depends on what schedules look like, but man, throwing the kids in a double stroller and going for a run with a weighted vest on, stopping every half mile to a mile or so, doing push-ups, ruck march with the stroller, easy. Taking the kids to a playground so that way I can do pull-ups while they run around. And then on my chances where I need to catch my breath, I run around with them. It's not that difficult to find ways to incorporate your kids into your workout. As they get older, then they can be working out with you. So, small babies, yeah, throw them in the stroller, give mom a break. It's awesome. As they get a little bit bigger, playground stuff. As they get a little bit bigger than that, they can start joining you in your workout. Tell you, you want to feel like a superhero? Get your kids to the point where they can sit up and balance on your shoulders or on your back while you're doing push-ups, and they say, "Go daddy, go," while you're doing push-ups. You are going to be a hero in their eyes, and you're going to feel like $1 million. I'm just saying, like, finding ways to incorporate your kids into your exercise is totally worth it. Time reading the Word. A few different things. For mass absorption of the Word, I really like having an audio Bible. The YouVersion app, which just about everybody who does the Bible on an iPhone has that. But the YouVersion app, the majority of the translations on there have an audio Bible. I really like the ESV one, and it's just because I grew up with ESV, so I have the most scripture memorized in ESV. They don't have a Scriptures 2009 audio on there yet. If they ever do, it'd be nice, but I don't foresee that happening right away. The dude who reads the King James on that Bible app one, my gosh, has he got a voice. Fantastic. So just for pure listening, that's pretty good. Several of the other translations that are on there have decent reading on there for the audio Bible stuff. You can do a paid one if you're looking for an audio Bible, and you may look into it. I would kind of shop around, find a translation and a narrator that you like, because that is going to play into you actually wanting to listen to it. I have 3 or 4 translations that I consult when I'm studying. In general, when I'm just picking up the Bible to read, I will either have an ESV or a copy of the Scriptures. If I'm doing a very long passage read and I'm just trying to get the gist of it, having a NIV 84, and I like the 84. I don't really like the modern NIV. There's a big difference. And a New Living Translation and an ESV gives me a good paraphrase, a good thought for thought, and a decent word for word. Those are ones that I like. there's a difference between a casual reading and a deep study. A deep study I may never get out of one chapter. A casual read, I may be reading 5 or 6 chapters at a time. Carving out 20 to 30 minutes to read a couple of chapters, even if it's just a proverb of the day, and a little bit of time in pick your book of the Bible that you're working through. I mean, you can plow through 4 or 5 chapters in 20, 30 minutes. Go back and read them again later. There's nothing that says that you have to do the Bible in the year kind of a reading plan. You can spend weeks in the same 5 or 6 chapters. It's one of those that you're going to glean a lot more going in and repeat on some of this stuff. There's no arbitrary amount of time that you have to spend in. So, in all honesty, start with a few minutes, and when you get to a certain point where you are just craving more time in the scriptures than you are doing other things, and it will build. The more time you spend in scripture, the more you'll want to spend time in scripture. I mean, replace some of your doom scrolling on social media with listening to an audio Bible. It will give you some pretty good area familiarity with stuff that's going on. It's worth it. Homestead stuff. My homestead is in the works. It is not officially in my fingers yet. So that's something that, while I have access to that land, I don't have ownership of that land yet. So it's kind of touch and go. I don't have a lot of homestead projects. It's more of practicing my gardening than anything else. That's like the main thing. And right now, the way I've got my garden set up is it takes a few minutes to water and a few minutes to weed, and that's it. I don't have a very big garden right now. As things grow, I would love to grow my garden, but it's also one of those that right now I'm not going to upscale my garden on the little lot that we have right now, because I can't drive out to the homestead area every day, or let alone, for a couple of times a week. So until we're more situated on what that land is going to become, I'm just not going to invest the time in making the size garden that I want to make right now. Because if you're further away from the problem, you're just really not going to be able to solve it until you're closer to the problem. So for what that's worth, in general, what's important to you, you will make time for. The full-time job stuff, it is what it is. I highly recommend having a job that when you are off the clock, you're mentally off the clock too. It is very stressful to have a job that you are thinking about that job when you're not there. And it's, you can decompress at the end of the day, take 20, 30 minutes and just all that. It's no big deal. But if you have been off for 18 hours, you shouldn't still be thinking about work. And if you have a job where that's the case, where work is always on your mind, like maybe you're on call, that's difficult. And I understand you got to provide for your family, and it is what it is. But job searching for something that when you're off, you're not bringing work home with you, that is going to be one of the best things for the health of your marriage, the health of your relationship with your kids, your mental health. Because if you're always thinking about work, what's that saying about all the other things that you've got to do? What's that saying about all the other things that you want to do? And I'm not saying don't have a job where you don't love it, where you're like, you wake up going, man, I can't wait to get to work. Those are good things. But when you're not at work, you need to be doing whatever you're doing and not thinking about work when you're not there. Those things are difficult. I think we've pretty well addressed that one. Getting into your follow-up question about coming into Torah and Sunday church. So when my wife and I came to Torah and we started keeping Shabbat before we became Torah observant. We started keeping the Feast of Booths before we came Torah observant. And it was a couple of years before we actually like, oh, hey, we think he wants us to do these things. We'd gotten pretty ingrained at the Sunday church that we were going to. And the Sunday church that we're going to is a good church. The pastor challenges us, and not in a hard way. It's a, hey, this is what Scripture says. He encourages people from the pulpit to keep Sabbath, which is really cool. And you don't really see that in a lot of Sunday Christian churches. We open the Bible and we go through it. We don't ignore stuff. Our church was going through some problems before we had this pastor. And long story short, we saw one of two options. Either leave quietly and find something else wherever the Father was leading us, or go ahead and stay and be a peacemaker. And the overwhelming answer that we had was stay and be a peacemaker. So this caused us to really have to think about a few things. Like, how do we navigate that? We don't really know. But what we do know is that we're supposed to be in attendance there, and we're supposed to be active. And we haven't been told to stop. So with that, okay, we're still here until he tells us to leave. We still keep Shabbat, but we go fellowship on Sunday mornings. And that's something that, I can't tell you what the right thing is for you to do. I would say seek that out in prayer. If you have got a Sunday church where it is very biblically based, that's on you. Pray about it and follow the conviction that the Father leaves on your heart, because Sunday churches are good. The ones that aren't teaching the Bible are not good. The ones that are teaching Scripture, rock solid. May disagree in a few areas, but I let people address their questions to me when they come up. I don't go seeking out theological differences with people. That's the opinion that we have settled on, is like, hey, yeah, we don't interpret that passage that way. Cool. If somebody's like, hey, how come you do this? Let me tell you why. But we don't go starting arguments. Now, if we see something that's unbiblical, we're going to say something. But so far, very, very little. As far as how does this work, what's the transition, all or nothing? I would point you to, I believe it is Joshua chapter 5, where Israel is getting ready to go into the promised land. And before they go into the promised land, they circumcise the next generation because they hadn't yet. The old generation had died off. There was just a few people who were still circumcised. And, Yah said, hey, make some flint knives and go circumcise everybody. It's a tall order. I would like to point out to you that those individuals were wearing tzitzit. I would like to point out to you that those individuals were keeping Pesach. I would like to point out to you that those individuals were given the law all the way through. But they hadn't been circumcised yet. Their parents hadn't circumcised them yet. Also, when Israel received the law, they didn't get it all at once. They got portions, given a chunk, and then stuff goes on. And then they're given another chunk, and then more stuff goes on. And then they're given another chunk, and more stuff goes on. They weren't given it all in 5 minutes and say, hey, figure it out. So a lot of us who do feel called into keeping Torah sometimes are scratching our heads going like, hey, this is a lot. It's like, back up the truck a little bit. Start somewhere and work your way in. It's one of those that you will mess up, and you're not expected to be perfect in this area. This is something that start somewhere, continue reading scripture, and as he lays more convictions on you, follow those convictions. We started keeping Sabbath and keeping Sukkot a couple years before we became Torah observant. And we're still not good at this. Like, we're still figuring things out. So the aspect of moving into it, it's going to take time. So I wouldn't get all in a tizzy about, hey, we have these convictions, so we have to literally change everything overnight. If you have a conviction and it's from the Father, follow that conviction. But you will find in doing that there will be small micro adjustments as things go on. And I fall back to this analogy, but it's perfect in my opinion, just because this is what I realized. The point of my channel, the 12th C conditioning, is in actually doing things and actually using your stuff. I had body armor sitting in my closet for years that I bought to LARP with, and because I thought that politicians were going to make it illegal at the time. I didn't start wearing it regularly until relatively recently. Hooter in Torah was doing pull-ups in his vest, and I was like, I can't be shown up. I have got to throw my vest on, and I've got to start working out in this thing. And several days a week, I'm in it. You know, at my peak, 6 days a week, working out in it. Right now, 4 to 5 days a week, pretty consistently. 6 days a week on really good weeks. But training in my stuff has caused me to move things around in it, because I had it set it up perfect for LARPing. I was like, yeah, this is great. I never wore it. But now that I'm in it for a minimum of 4 hours a week, regularly doing stressful things in it, up, down, moving, I found, hey, this doesn't really work in this area. This rubs too much. Oh, hey, no, this isn't, if it's like this, I can't reach in here and actually do this. Start moving. If you feel called to keep Torah, start somewhere and adjust while you're moving. It is substantially easier for momentum, moving with that momentum, than it is to start moving from zero and then having to adjust on the fly before you even start moving. You know, get in your car and turn your wheel with the car off. Turn it on and start moving, and then turn the wheel. It's a lot easier to steer. That's where I would point you to. I don't think that necessarily everything has to happen all at once. And it's because you think this needs to be done in a particular way, and then you start doing it and you realize, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense if we do it this way, because now we're actually keeping the law that's there and not just, well, how do you, what do you, hypothetical questions are cool in the hypothetical. In the actual reality, a lot of those things start to sort themselves out. Thank you so much for your question. I would love to continue this discussion down in the comments. Go do hard things.